the Union County local source advertised on January 7, 2016. Notification was sent to the Star Ledger, promptly posted on the municipal public bulletin board and filed with the office of the municipal clerk, informing the public of the time and place according to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law, Chapter 231, PL 1975. Good evening, everyone. Up front, I'll apologize. My throat is a little raspy tonight, so I'll try to be as clear as I could. First, on the agenda is a presentation to the Liquid Church.
Heidi, come on up. And your group.
And I'll just say this is a very small portion of the group that was here making our borough hall look beautiful. I will make this official. Office of the Mayor, Certificate of Acknowledgement. Liquid Church approached the Borough of Barwood to be the recipient of the 2016 Summer Outreach Program. The borough quickly accepted this generous offer. On July 15th to 17th, 2016, over 75 volunteers came to participate in the Summer Outreach Program that included painting the municipal public building, a horseshoe pit, and also spreading mulch for the Barwood Sports and Recreation Complex. The members also piloted plants that were given out to the senior citizens of Barwood. The borough sincerely thanks Pastor Ron. Pastor Ron isn't here this evening. He had a family emergency. And the Liquid Church Outreach volunteers led by Outreach Event Coordinator Patty Anderson. Tremendous donation to the citizens of the Borough of Barwood. Lastly, but not least, Liquid Church, located on Center Street, will begin their services on October the 9th, 2016. And we hereby welcome the Liquid Church to the Barwood community and look forward to continuing relationship with Liquid Church. Thank you and God bless you all.
It doesn't work? Well, I think I speak for every one of us when we are so grateful to the community for inviting us and welcoming us, and it really was our honor and our pleasure to come and do the things that we did for the town, and we are looking forward to more partnerships and just working with everybody in the town. We're here for you guys. That's really what we just want you to know. We're here for y'all. Thank you.
You made it work harder than anybody.
Thank you.
We will continue on with regular business. Borough Engineer Donna Borriello, please.
Yes, Mayor. I don't have much to report except that we're working on a sidewalk program. We haven't heard anything new. I'm sure you've all noticed that there's been no news in the newspaper about any legislative act increasing the DOT funds. So at the present time, everything's still on hold. So not doing much in that regard.
Any questions for Mr. Borriello? Hearing none, Borough Attorney Robert Renaud.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a couple of ordinances for introduction tonight that are on your agenda. We reviewed the bids for the South Avenue, the Center Street project, and there were low bidders in order. There's a resolution on the agenda, on the consent agenda for the award contract. I think that's all I have for you at this point, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Renaud this evening? Seeing none, Ms. Ariema, do you have anything for the council this evening?
The only thing I have, and I don't know when you want to discuss it, is the adoption of the redevelopment ordinance, when that will take place and where.
I think first, as you all know, on the agenda, we're canceling the meeting of the 9th. That was my suggestion, so we can have more flexibility of picking a date this month. And I believe, Ms. Ariamba, you went out and say, look for some dates for us?
Well, depending on what you want to do, I would imagine you want to hold that meeting somewhere else. If you do.
That was my first statement, that we're going to have a larger venue to have it at.
So I contacted the school to find out what I needed to do to make, have a meeting there. I got a facilities use form and I have some dates. You would pick a date and then I had to publish it. I had to publish the ordinance and notify the newspaper of the special meeting. So, pretty flexible, August 10th or 11th, 15th, 16th, not the 16th, 15th, 17th, or 18th, any of those five.
Any input from the council?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm on board with canceling the August 9th meeting, and I would prefer to have the adoption of this after Labor Day, when more people are paying attention. I think it would just be to go the extra mile, rather than put it in the middle of August. I think it would be a real, it would be a good outreach to the community if we did it after Labor Day, when people are around and focused on things. So I mean, for the people of Garwood, I can't see what 2 or 3 weeks difference would make. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, totally. For the benefit of the taxpayers of Garwood.
What difference does a couple of weeks make? Let's do it after Labor Day.
Councilman, a lot of people are away, it's the summer. I think
You just suggested that. I'm agreeing with you.
That's great. Thank you, Councilman.
You're welcome. I thought you were going to hit me.
Good, I'm getting ready to hug you, you go for it.
Okay, with that thought in mind, it looks like
What the hell's the difference?
we're going.
What's the difference?
Okay, we'll still have the 9th of August on the agenda for cancellation. Then can we assume that September 13th will be appropriate for everyone?
September 13th is the regular meeting?
Okay.
Is it the regular meeting? I don't have
That's
that.
correct.
It is the regular meeting.
I was just thinking of changing it to the school, but then you might have conflict.
What about the week before? It's after Labor Day, but it's
I didn't bring my calendar.
It's when a special
And
meeting
the only
could
thing
be
is
held.
that I didn't check that far into the future with the school. And of course, summer's easy, because, probably it was easy for me to get a lot of dates, because she said it didn't have going on, but you'll have to give me a chance to
Okay.
see, so I guess you can just, next meeting, if you set the date, then I need a little time to notice, because you have to notice. Our newspaper, you have to tell them the week before, that this got to go in the paper next week.
Okay, now, why don't we just have the regular meeting and then just have it at a different venue? That would be my suggestion. Our regular September 13th meeting.
So is that, how do I, is it,
Change location.
do I move a meeting just the same way, 48-hour notice, or do we have to cancel and
Yeah, we could
reschedule?
we could move the meeting with 48 hours notice,
Okay.
but I wouldn't do it 48 hours, but yes.
Yeah, well, I'm
No, we
just,
should for September now.
I'm just saying the law.
Okay.
Okay.
We don't really need to have a discussion.
Well,
No,
that's
that's-
actually, that's what the question is, and it's actually a little more complicated than that. The question is, whether it becomes a special meeting if you move it. I don't believe so. I mean, my suggestion would be that you could do the meeting, advertise that you moved the location, post it on the door so that if anybody does not, it's not like we're in Woodbridge or something, where it's going to take people 15 minutes to get there. Post it on the door, and then if anybody comes, they'll see that we're wherever we're going to be.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, so you want to adopt it at the, what was the date that you need?
Well, we want to put up for a vote on the 13th of September.
Okay, that's all I need to know, so I got to
Assuming that we
send it to the paper.
have the first reading tonight and it passes.
Okay.
But then, that's another question.
I haven't checked though, everybody, if the school's available that day.
No,
okay?
I understand.
And if they're not, then I'll let you know.
Okay.
give me direction for next council
Can
meeting.
can I ask one last question? I'm sorry. Does the, setting the ordinance in motion, is it supposed to be 2 meetings? So do we set introducing it at 1 meeting and then the next
It's on,
meeting?
it's on the agenda for tonight.
During
For
the
the
council.
first reading.
I would support tabling it to, you know, again, provided that Tina finds that it's September 14th, tabling it to the 23rd in August, and then we could have 2 consecutive readings, a vote for introduction and then a vote to adopt on the 13th. That would be my.
Joe, can I ask you, because you're school board liaison, do you know if September 13th is a board meeting?
That was tough.
Because they meet on Tuesdays.
They usually do, and it's usually around that time.
Yeah.
They're usually the third Tuesday.
Third Tuesday.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, I think August is a little weird, so it's early.
Okay. All right, well, we'll wait till you get to it, to officials.
Let's go through the agenda and see
Okay.
what happens. Okay,
I don't have anything else.
thank you. Any unfinished business with the council this evening? Seeing none, any new business? Okay, move on. Comments and matters for discussion from members of council. Councilwoman Kukrow.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a statement here. I did go to the Union County Freeholders meeting last week, as it was my turn on the rotation for council members. Thank you to Councilwoman Tedisco for setting the schedule up. You may want to rethink this, especially with someone like me that has such a low opinion of the heavy-handed government. I, of course, am a little biased going to these things, but I like to be a good little soldier and do my duty as your councilwoman. You can rest assured that my opinion has not changed, as they seem to do nothing much except pick their pockets and spend our money. This meeting, however, was a little different, as our freeholders implemented a great program called the Seniors in Motion, and it will give me a chance to speak on behalf of Garwood seniors. I would like everyone to rest easy, as I was on my best behavior. I was polite, very professional, put my pantyhose on, dress on, and I smiled throughout as I spoke. I'm ready to do battle on behalf of Garwood senior citizens. The Seniors in Motion program is going to supply vans to multiple towns for transportation for our seniors. Unfortunately, these vans, for whatever reason, and trust me, do not want to speculate on who received the contract to supply the vans that we ultimately pay for, have no lip for the elderly, the disabled, and the like. As we discussed at the last meeting, we were going to try and see if we could get a monetary stipend in lieu of vans, as Garwood already has a very nice van with a lift. Not to look a gift towards in the mouth, I assume most towns were taking the van. Only Westfield wanted a deviation, that was for a smaller one. I'll have to find out if they were able to have that addressed. The mayor sent a great letter to the freeholders asking for the money instead of the van, so this meeting was a great time for me to see if I could further our cause. When I introduced myself and started to speak, I noticed lights on the ceiling. I thought, oh great, a meat hook without the hook. Red, green, and yellow, I better talk fast, which is what I did. The Honorable Mr. Bergen said they already received a letter from our town and would take it under advisement. I thought, okay, I do know what that means. I replied, I did understand, but thought it best to be their person to give them a face with a name and representing our town and seniors. I stated our case very eloquently, let the chips fall where they may. He directed my inquiries to a Mr. Frank Guzzo, the Director of Department of Human Affairs. I only had a very few questions. He was very pleasant, very amicable, and was very eager to answer anything I had to say. The cost of the vans was one that we ultimately pay for anyway. How long do we have to keep the vans before they can be sold? Figuring that would be a good way to get the money, get the van, then sell it to use for the seniors for years to come. However, I'm still waiting for that one particular question. He did call me up with the price of the vans, which was $32,000. I assume in all things government that the wheels will have to be falling off and rusted and worthless by the time that condition has been met. But I tried. Once again, I asked the van questions. I figured since I was there already, I mentioned the matching grants issue. I stated my case again very pleasantly. Everyone knows how I feel about matching anything. No need to go into it again. I did say we did not use our recreation grant this year, as we were trying to not spend the taxpayers' money, trying to be frugal, and we couldn't match the funds. I looked at the red, green, and yellow lights and said, yippee, I did not exceed my time, so no hook for me on this day. So I sat back down. Frank Guzzo, who I must say was very pleasant, he came up to me directly after the meeting. I asked for his card. He ran right down to his office to get one. We had a 10-minute conversation. He understood our plight, but ultimately they're not going to substitute money. But I did leave there with some hope. As we left him, I said, how can we get some Republicans up there? He just smiled, as I still heard him chuckling as the elevator door shut. Freeholder Hudak, not as pleasant, although he spoke about my matching grants abhorrence, and pretty much said he thinks they are just wonderful. As we were walking out to the parking lot, Freeholder Granados came up and introduced himself to me and said he thought what I had to say was a very reasonable request. He would see if anything could be done. I asked for his card, shook his hand, and thanked him. As I walked away, you want me to take that out? I would say this, I would certainly walk away with a joker face on if it meant helping our fellow residents. However, I draw the line at selling my soul to the devil to do it. I did learn one other thing as we left that meeting, that when Freeholder Hudak responded that he loved matching grants, I raised my hand to counter what he said, and Mr. Bergen shook his head no. So next time, I will have all my questions prepared, some rebuttals, and take another bite from the proverbial Freeholder apple, so to speak. And that was my second experience at a Freeholder meeting in my entire lifetime. So thank you, Councilwoman Tedisco, for setting it up. I'm
Mr.
learning
Forgot.
much too much as I'm going along. So that's all for my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Martin?
I'm overwhelmed by the entertainment value of Councilwoman's report. I have nothing.
Thank you. Councilman Matthew?
Yeah, I guess since it's campaign season, I get a lot of complaints going door to door, so forgive me. Street sweeping, 200 block of 3rd Avenue. How do we schedule the street sweeper? How does that work?
What were you asking?
No, I guess the head of streets and roads.
Well, the street sweeper is scheduled to go out this week. There's no real schedule for it. It's when they have time for it and it's needed. They did street sweep the entire south side, and they worked on the north side about a month and a half ago.
Okay. So I just had a couple of inquiries on the 200 block of 3rd Avenue, so we just passed that along. One other thing I had, and Tina, this probably is for you. I had a question about a bank-owned building on the 500 block of Locust. You probably know the property. It's still, I think it's owned by Wells Fargo or something. It actually looks not in bad shape. But it's been owned by the bank a long time. Do we maintain any contact with them, or do we know?
Yeah, by law, they have to send me a letter saying who's responsible for the property.
Mm-hmm.
And that law went into place like in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And I have all those letters in one folder, and when I get one, I copy it to the tax department and to the police department.
Uh-huh.
Because they would be the ones that handle property maintenance and whatnot. And tax would handle any, those delinquencies. I could look in the file and tell you who the contact is for that property if you feel like that it's in.
Yeah, actually,
Disarray.
for me, it's a bit of, actually, I didn't think it was, but I'm just curious because I wonder how long the bank holds the property before they relinquish it. You would think that there would be some amount of money in it, and they,
Really long, you'd be amazed.
yeah.
Did you say it was on Locust?
It was on Locust. You probably know the property. It's like in the 520s, I
It's
think.
been like that for over 5 years.
For 5
At
years.
least. It's so long.
Because you would just think with paying the taxes and the upkeep at some point.
But
you
I'm
would-
gonna look, I'll look up.
Yeah, and Tina, not to push that on you, if you have anybody who's a contact, just out of my own curiosity and to get back to this constituent,
Public record.
I would just like to know.
You can have it, it's public record. You
Great.
can have the letter.
Great, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Yes, Councilman Matthew. I did look into this quite a few months ago. It was brought to my attention. I did go over there and look at the house. The neighbors have been plowing the driveway and taking care of the maintenance on the outside of the property. I did speak to Chief Underhill about it. He was very gracious and very informative. Try getting through to a bank that has a property that's going to go to sheriff's sale for closure. Good luck trying to find anybody that'll deal with it. But he has been all over it nonstop since it was brought to his attention. And that was a few years ago. I mean, I know the house, I know the people that live right around it, and I also know that they've been trying to maintain it. That's why it looks so good from the outside. So quite frankly, they would have done themselves a big favor putting it on the market, gotten sold like the market has been doing so well. But as with the banks, you just can't. But they've been looking into it for quite a few years already, and Underhill has been all over this. Thank you.
I just like to confirm that she's absolutely correct, because even though I had my 2 cents into it, it's been a big legal problem. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Councilman Sarno?
The only quick note I have is, when you look at the liquid outreach, I think you were a little humble, and I think that people need to know that the mayor was out there working in 95-degree heat, putting out mulch, out here painting and really helping out as well. And nice job doing that. It's good working with you.
Thank you. And also to you, and I must say it on your behalf, you were here all day Saturday. How did the concert work out?
Hey, we skipped out in the rain, and the whole play was very good.
Thank you. And thank you for your thoughts. Councilwoman Tedesco?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Council President Petrozelli?
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing that I really need to discuss, and while we have Don here, is there was an email sent to us from the owners of 609 East Street, and they were asking council people to come by, but I really want to get your opinion, Don, on that. That was the house that was being sold, and people wanted to buy some of the property, and I guess there's a right-of-way there. And I just wanted to see what you thought about that, as far as, if that's something that we should do from an engineering standpoint. Is that something that we should not do?
Well, the borough has a 60-foot right-of-way or 66-foot right-of-way the entire length, and it seems to me that you don't want to give away a part of it in one location. You want to maintain that right-of-way. There was a comment in the, I think, a letter that went out about squaring it off. You just can't square the property off, because if you were to square it off with the front line, you'd go 60 feet out into the street. So, I mean, the people who live there, they've been using the property for 50 years. I think nobody cares about that, and I would suggest that that's what continues. I mean, there's nobody stopping them from using the property, and I doubt whether we'll ever pave it. Maybe not in my lifetime, but who knows? One of the problems is the road right now is only in Cranford. So Cranford has nothing to say about our half, and we have nothing to say about their half. If we decide to make that a two-way street, the other half of the right-of-way would come out of what we own. I don't know how the road came into existence. It probably, the houses that are on it look like they're maybe 50 years old, or maybe a little older. But probably when it wasn't even a street, it was Paper Street, until they decided to build those homes, and they put just enough pavement in there to make it work. But I don't know whether the town would ever want to make that a two-way street, and I don't think you want to give away the right-of-way.
Okay, we'll proceed on with the meeting with public comments. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the mayor and council? Please step to the microphone, state your full name and address. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. Jen Blumenstock from 15 Spruce. I just want to address the moving of the adoption meeting after Labor Day that was discussed before. I think that's a good idea. I do agree with that. However, kind of have a problem with the fact that I question the motives of some of the council people up here as to why they would want to do it, because they've been so vocal about the plan already. They obviously have come to their conclusion already. If we could use this next month or however many days it is to talk to the people who are out there, get their opinions, because there isn't just one opinion, and I think that there are residents out there who have varied opinions on this project. There's pros and cons to any project, and I think we need to get out there and talk to the people about that. I hope that the council people up here will do it. Some council people have remained quiet on the issue, because I do think that they are looking into it still and talking to people. Other council people have been very vocal, and I get a little afraid that this is just a re-election tool, that pushing it off to get people in here and get passions raised about it, rather than really going out there and seeing what the people are saying. So that's really just my 2 cents on there. I hope that you do take the time to go out there and speak to the people who might not agree with your particular opinion on this at this point. And so will they sway you? I don't know, but I think that is your job as a council person, is to go out and speak to not only the people who are on your side, but the people who may have a differing opinion. So thank you.
Thank you.
is Keith Locke. We're the owners of 609 East that came up a minute ago. I'd just like to clarify something Mr. Borrello said. I'll just give a little background to it. We have a very commendable young couple that wants to buy our house. They love the house. The only hitch is this property situation where, because town property cuts across our backyard, the understanding was that it would not be able to be used for a fence because it's town property. Therefore, there's no way that this arrangement with the closing, actually, of course, the council really cares about that, but it's very close down the road. We have a house we're supposed to close on up in Warren before too long. So it's very important that we get clarification of this. Mr. Guariello, I think, would you say again, please, what you did say as to being able to use it any way we want or something like that?
What I basically said is that you're using it now, and no one's bothering you about it.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I think with the discussion about fencing it in came up at the last meeting, and I think you were talking about buying the property. You probably could buy a fence and put it up, and if and when the town ever would ask the people to remove it so that they could use the road, you would have saved some money on the deal. I don't see why anything's going to change. The borough's not. I don't see the borough looking to do anything in that right of way for a long time. But I don't think they should give it up either. It's a public street, and we have, if we start cutting up our public streets, we'll be riding on the sidewalk soon. So, I mean, I would suggest that you just continue to use it. Mayor and council, I think, you can't go to the planning board, but you can get, I think, relief from the mayor and council to put up a fence that would encroach into that right of way until such time as the borough decides to use it. And if that'll probably be when the young man wants to buy it to grandfather or great-grandfather. But the borough would still have the property. And everybody in that block on Locust Street, everybody lives on Locust. They have no frontage on Rankin, but they all go right to the back. Right. So I don't, and I don't see what's going to change.
Even the neighbor very close to us, you're referring to, put in blacktop from Rankin to their house on Locust, been using for decades. So I'm just bringing this up because there are very critical situations household-wise at stake. And I know, I hope it's right to say this, but I know I'm sure a very major factor that entered into all folks taking these very responsible jobs that you have, involving a lot of sacrifice. We realize that. We appreciate it very much. But I was thinking about it today. I think that along with your prime responsibility to maintain the principles of the Constitution, that there's a human factor enters into your wanting to do this job that you're doing. We appreciate it. And that involves wanting to do as much as you can for others, compassion, understanding, and that I would suggest just runs right alongside maintaining the principles of the Constitution. So I don't know if that appeals to anybody here, but we do have a situation. The cutest little guy here would be staying inside the fence. I don't know how much these things affect us, but I just wanted to bring this up, that we're hoping that tonight there might be enough leeway granted for what needs to be done, that land that is not usable for anything else might be granted. There's no mitigating factors to prevent it in relation to the Constitution. If our consciences and our affections, should we say, maybe not the best word, are carried, maybe something could be arrived at where these young folks, very commendable, they want to stay in Garwood, and I think that's cool. So I just leave my comments with everybody. And say thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Mayor, if I may speak to that at the end of public comment?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Jean McComb, 119 Willow Avenue. I have a question about the paving on Willow Avenue. At halfway, it's done. Is this the way it's going to be? It's completed now, where you have from center to east, one side down from the curb to the middle? From East to Oak, same thing. And then when you get from Oak to New Street, it's a patchwork. We have patches all over the place.
I understand that's not our job, it's the water company's.
Yes, the water company really had no obligation other than repair their trench, which was a 4-foot wide swath through the town, and then it would have been very checkerboard because they would have had to make connections. So they agreed, and it took some doing, to get them to pave the side of the road where the water main was. And the reason that being is that all of those connections were dug up on the other side. They would, I guess, tunnel under the road, and they weren't digging the road up on the other side. So what you'll find now is the one side of the road is paved completely. The other side of the road doesn't have any disturbance. In the particular block she's talking about, I believe the water mains moves from the south side of the street to the north side of the street. So there were bigger trenches for some reason in that block, and they repaired the big trenches, but there was no sense of paving the entire road. So that road also has never been reconstructed. The roads that we ran the entire pavement on, we ran halfway through, were roads that we had already paved within the last 6 or 7 years, and we felt that if the water company was going to do anything, they were going to have to at least pave half the road. So I think it was a compromise. Like I said, they could have run just a 4-foot trench down and just pave what they disturbed. They agreed to pave half the right of way.
Have you been down Willow Avenue?
I've seen it.
I have.
Huh?
Yeah.
And you think that looks great to be living on that street the way it is, that you got patches in front of your house now? It was better before they did it. I got neighbors coming to me going, is this completed? I'm like, I would soon, but I go to the meeting to find out because nobody else wants to come.
That particular block has not been reconstructed. There are patches from one end to the other, old and new. And that's what happens today when a utility company does repair work. Whether it's a sewer connection repair work, a new sewer, or a water service or a gas service, the same thing happens. You dig it up. Asphalt is good whether it looks pretty or not. It's good in its structural part. So they've paved the road satisfactorily to meet what they're required to do, and that is to repair a trench that they made. Their trenches most of the time were as big as this table. And I know there's a lot of them, but there's a lot of houses. There's 18 houses. There's 18 trenches.
Mr. Gorrio, if I may suggest, can we put this on the 2017 DOT grant?
Sure, we haven't done that yet.
Well, I'm saying yes.
Okay.
At least we can start with that and see where it takes us.
Okay.
And I just have one question, Don. Being that, Mr. McComb brought this up, is there any responsibility once they do this and they have all these little patches all over the place? If this decides to come up in the next winter, do they have any responsibility to come back and, make it right?
Utility companies are always responsible for their trenches.
Anyone else? Step forward, please.
Good evening, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. Council Bruce Patterson, Street, Frank Willow Avenue, and I live on Willow also, a couple blocks from Gene. But actually, first, I'd like to thank you. I did mention about the little hole that was forming, and it was filled, I think, the next day or the day
Call the next day, Bruce.
Did you do that?
I couldn't call that night, but call the next morning.
All right, but anyway, and yes, I appreciate it, at least them paving half the street. I understand what Gene was saying. I mean, it just doesn't look right, but, it is what it is, and I understand your obligation. I appreciate you kind of twisting their arm to actually do half the street instead of just leaving it as that. It was an ugly trench repair, and I understand their obligations, and I appreciate what you did in forcing them to at least pave half the street, so thank you very much on that. Possibly, could somebody explain about the status of this DOT? The transportation funding, only because, Christie, I don't know what he's doing, is it done? Or?
It's on hold.
It's still on hold?
Yes, Mr. Gorrio reported.
Yeah, because down in the county, they're talking like $15 million worth of transportation plans that are on hold.
Well, we happen to have it at the wrong time. We got 2 national conventions that are, I think, taking up some of the politicians' time. So when maybe the legislators come back next week, they'll get to work on it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris Christie. And the legislature, but anyway. And just move forward, and I thank Ms. Blumenstock for bringing up the dialogue, opening up for the public to at least speak on the upcoming redevelopment plan. And actually, I do have a question, and it's kind of overarching, but if our borough attorney, Bob Renaud, can explain the process moving forward now that we left the planning board. It's now the redevelopment plan for the South in the council. And everybody here on council really doesn't know possibly their authority, what they should be doing. Can they actually tweak the plan? What kind of input? So if maybe when I sit down, maybe Attorney Renaud can actually give the public and the council people enough information so they understand their obligations and responsibilities. And it seems like this is a very important portion of the process. I guess just another thing on the same, the public meeting. When the public's going to come in and they're going to speak, you're talking about where you're going to vote right after that. To tell you the truth, that doesn't give us warm and fuzzy feelings that you're actually listening to the public. That, whatever this meeting is that the public's going to speak, I'm sure there's going to be enough people speaking for it and against it. So at that point, when the public meeting is then adjourned, that portion, you're going to be voting. And that doesn't seem right. It really seems like you should deliberate further and maybe the next meeting come to a conclusion, thinking about what the public is actually saying and give a long, hard thought to the deliberation. I mean, we are facing something that we've never faced before. I mean, this is a very, very large project over at CASAL. Percentages worked out is it's going to increase the population by 12%. The housing stock, or the residential units, let's call it, going to be increased by 17%. The rental ratio will be up near 50%. These are large numbers that we're facing, and this is something that really does take a lot of deliberation, a lot of critical thinking, and like I mentioned, maybe Bob can explain what the council should be doing actually. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts on that, and I look forward to Bob's explanation. Just one last thing. And Ms. Blumenstock did mention it. She says it seems to be a re-election tool. And to tell you the truth, it should be. It actually should be. Only because this is a major issue, a major development going right in our downtown. And to tell you the truth, I mean, it's going to be a lot of heat on candidates of both parties. And hopefully, they have their thoughts and ideas in line enough to explain their philosophy of what they feel. So, I mean, by all rights, it really should be a re-election tool. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I look forward to
Mr. Renaud, would you like to comment? Mr. Patterson's question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just not know where to start, but let's see.
You only have 2 minutes.
Okay. So shall I start with the process itself? You have you know what's gone on so far, I assume, and I assume Mr. Patterson knows what's gone on so far, which is this process started by the mayor and council adopting a resolution authorizing the planning board to undertake an investigation as to whether a specific delineated area should be an area in need of redevelopment. The planning board then followed the statutory process and made that determination and adopted a resolution and recommended that the governing body find that the delineated area be designated as an area in need of redevelopment. The governing body then adopted a resolution declaring the area to be an area in need of redevelopment. And then at that point, there are 2 routes that can be taken for the development of a redevelopment plan. One is for the governing body to prepare a redevelopment plan. The other is for the governing body to direct the planning board to prepare a redevelopment plan. The governing body opted to have the planning board prepare the redevelopment plan, which it did, had several public hearings in accordance with law, and then adopted the plan and recommended that the governing body adopt it. So that's the status, that's where we are, is you have an ordinance in front of you to adopt the redevelopment plan. You could vote for it or not. Those are your choices, or I should say you can vote for it or you can vote against it. So those are the options that you have with respect to the redevelopment plan. I should mention, I guess, for those members of the public that are here, or anybody that might hear about the meeting, is that there are at least two issues that are intertwined with this particular development. One of them being, actually, the main issue, which is probably has two parts to it, which is the constitutional obligation that each municipality in the state of New Jersey has to provide for a realistic development potential for affordable housing. And that constitutional mandate that the courts have declared requires municipalities to provide for a certain amount of affordable housing. And if they do not allow developers to institute what's called a builder's remedy lawsuit, so that if affordable housing is not provided, the borough is open to a lawsuit. Currently, we are immune because we have been moving forward with a potential affordable housing plan, what's called a fair share plan, that incorporates this South Avenue development. I can't get into all the aspects of it because it is not just potential, but it's pending litigation, and I don't want to prejudice the borough's position, but I have to say that the declaratory judgment, the possibility of a builder's remedy lawsuit being a viable possibility for a builder, and the redevelopment plan are all tied together. So it's not simply a yes, I like this plan, no, I don't issue. Well, the council, assuming that it passes this ordinance on first reading, and then when it comes up for final passage, those are all discussions that I and others that are involved in the litigation will have with the council before the vote.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come up to the microphone?
Andy Bloomstock, 315 Spruce. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Patterson's comment.
Speak to the dais, please, not
in regards to this being an election tool, I think it's certainly an election topic, and I think all the candidates need to be talking about it, because if this is something that does happen, you know, there's other implications that whoever is elected will have to talk through as a future council member. What I do have a concern with is that the business of the council by our current elected council members is ignored, and implicitly the can is kicked. So it goes to whoever the new elected officials would be. And honestly, I don't like the idea of it implicitly becoming a referendum. I think we should move course. If course should move us in the direction that the election comes and goes, and it is the new council, I think that is what it is. But I have a concern that it is being turned into a referendum by continuing to stall.
Thank you. Councilwoman, you want to say a few words on?
I did. I wanted to thank Mr. Locke for coming here tonight and speaking on this topic, since it was brought up at the last council meeting. And in response to that, I know in the past week I haven't been able to go over to your property, but I would like to take a first-hand look. I believe the mayor has taken a look. So Mayor, if you have anything to share on that, Ms. Ariema, I know you've worked with Mr. Locke on this. If you have anything to share, I'd like to hear it. Also, Mr. Renaud and Mr. Goriello had presented us an idea where we wouldn't have to give up the borough property, but we could strike a compromise, where for now, putting a fence up would be permissible, and then down the road, if the borough were to expand the road, that perhaps it would then be an encroachment issue. So I see time mattering on this issue. I brought that up last time from the resident who spoke on the same topic. And so I would like to see us have something on for the next agenda to at least vote. And whether we vote yes or no, at least we should give the residents an answer. Vote on the compromise that Mr. Renaud and Mr. Goriello spoke about.
Well, that's put a fence up, correct?
It's to allow them to put a fence up.
That would be, they would make application,
Mhm.
they have an application, they go to the zoning officer, he would reject it because it's not their property. Then it would come back to me, then it would come before you and be voted by resolution. That would have to be prepared, that has to go through the process first.
Okay.
And then by resolution, you would either authorize them to put that fence on or not. And then that's when it would still be a temporary, not a temporary, but not a.
We wouldn't be selling it or giving it,
No,
not that we would be selling it for an amount, but.
Permission for them to put something in the borough right of way,
Mhm.
which is done by resolution of the governing body. So that's,
I
you
guess,
shouldn't vote on it if you don't have.
okay, so once the application is submitted, I would be in favor of at least voting on it. I believe you deserve an answer sooner rather than later, so I guess I'm encouraging you to put an application in. In the meantime, I know I'll stop by the property and take a look by myself, and I encourage the rest of the council to prepare their opinion on that. So if that day comes, we're ready to vote.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your
Thank you.
input is very, very valuable and positive. I don't want to throw anything in that might complicate it, and maybe it's not resolvable, but the closings on these houses are probably before the next meeting. Is there any way that anything could be?
We need that application first, though, right?
There's a process for putting a fence up. It starts with an application that taken out. There's also online. You look at my office. With a fee. I guess you could assume kind of that you may receive that application and maybe you could discuss if you would like to consider that, but you don't have that in front of you and you don't have.
We need the application first regardless, it sounds like.
You should
So-
have.
Where it's going.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to find it, have to look at it. I mean, you can't have the fence, you know, for example, if it's a solid fence, it can't come out to the street because you've got the sight
If
line
it's a
issues.
corner
You know,
lot,
it's got to be. Right.
The corner lot, there's an ordinance that says 24 feet, all these things that can be addressed.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, so, Mr. Locke, do you understand the process better now about getting an application first or submitting one?
Is that just like from the building department fence permit?
no. Just come see me tomorrow if you want, and I'll help you with that.
Consider it done. Thank you all very much. We really appreciate your
Thank you.
assistance.
Also, as per pertaining to the last meeting, I was abstaining on this total application, so is it carrying over from meeting to meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Change your mind.
Okay.
Okay, as I say, last call. Seeing none, I'd like to close the public comment portion. And you have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second?
All in favor? Do we continue on? We'll take a 2-minute break, council.